What most people fail to notice over the last decade is that India was not merely building roads, railways, warehouses, or ports in isolation. What was being constructed was an entire economic nervous system designed to stabilize prices, control political risk, and lock in long-term electoral dominance. This is not accidental government, it is improvisation. It is a deliberate system level strategy where economics is used against economics, where politics is won without shooting slogans. Around 2018 to 2020, many observers noticed something strange. The Indian state, through agencies like the Food Corporation of India, began aggressively expanding their grain store capacity. Massive warehouses, silos, cold storage units, and upgraded depots were built across the country. To the casual observer, it looks redundant. India already produced enough food. Farmers were already complaining about surplus and low prices. So why build more storage? Why lock capital into static concrete and steel instead of flashy consumption schemes? India lies in understanding The answer lies in understanding India's single most dangerous macroeconomic vulnerability, food inflation. In India, food is not just any other consumption category. It dominates the inflation basket, shapes public anger, triggers monetary tightening, and has historically destroyed governments. Onion prices alone have unseated regimes. This is not folklore, it is political memory. Any government that allows food inflation to spiral signs its own death warrant. The lesson from 2009 to 2014 period was brutal and unforgettable. What the current regime understood was this: you cannot permanently control food inflation through monetary policy alone. Interest rates do not grow tomatoes. Repo hikes do not fix logistical bottlenecks. Inflation in India is fundamentally a supply side problem, not a demand side one. Any supply problems require physical solutions. Warehouses then were not about hoarding food, it's about creating time. Time for the government to release stocks when prices spike. To move grains across states without spoilage. Time to smooth seasonal volatility. Storage converts agricultural output into a controllable macroeconomic variable. Without storage, supply shock become price shocks. With storage, they become administrative events. This is where the spider web begins to reveal itself. Warehouses alone are useless without roads. Roads are inefficient without rail freights. Rail freights collapses without electrification. Electrification fails without reliable energy. Energy becomes expensive without renewables and scale. Each node feeds the other. Highways reduce transit time. Dedicated freight corridors reduce congestion. Electrified railways lower per unit transport cost. Cold chains reduce wastage. Warehouses allow price intervention. Together, they flatten inflation volatility. What appears to the voter as infrastructure development is in reality an anti-inflation architecture. It is not built for Instagram visuals. It is built to quietly prevent price explosions that force the Reserve Bank of India into rate hikes that strangle growth. When inflation remains near target, interest rates remain manageable. When interest rates remain stable, industrial planning becomes possible. When industry plans long term, capital formation accelerates. This is why the apparent contradiction you notice exists only on the surface. Yes, the government spends heavily on welfare. Yes, it transfers money directly into bank accounts. Yes, it offers GST relief and tax benefits to the middle class. And yes, the fiscal deficit expands. Under textbook Keynesian logic, this should ignite inflation, but India's inflation doesn't behave like a textbook model because the supply curve is being forced outward faster than the demand curve is shifting right. The direct benefit transfer are not reckless cash dumps. They replace leakage ridden subsidies with targeted income support. Most of the money goes into essential food, healthcare, education, not speculative consumption. At the same time, the state stands ready to buffer shocks, logistical capacity, and administrative control to prevent essential prices from spiraling. Demand rises, but supply is already waiting. Industrial growth, meanwhile, is throttled by high interest rates because much of India's new manufacturing investment is not funded by domestic retail credit at all. It is funded by global capital seeking stability, scale, and geopolitical diversification. India offers something rare: political continuity, controlled inflation, improving logistics, and a predictable policy environment. These are not accidents, these are engineered conditions. This is why the accusation that the ruling party is in 24 into 7 election mode misunderstands the game. The real campaign is macroeconomic stability. Voters may not understand logistics corridor or storage capacity ratios, but they understand one thing instinctively. Prices are not exploding, jobs are appearing, and the basic consumption feels manageable. That economic perception is more powerful than any speech. The political genius here is subtle. Welfare creates gratitude, infrastructure creates stability, and stability creates growth. Growth expands the tax base. A wider tax base funds more welfare. The cycle reinforces itself. Opposition parties often focus on redistribution without production or production without stability. This model integrates both. This is where economics becomes a weapon against economics. Traditional populism inflates demand and collapses supply. Austerity suppresses demand and angers voters. What India is executing is neither. It is a productive populism backed by supply side discipline. Welfare is given, but inflation is neutralized. Capex is expanded, deficits are absorbed by growth. Politics is won, but without lighting inflationary fires. Nothing in this system is random. The warehouse you remembered were not isolated projects. They were chess pieces placed in advance. Roads, railways, electrification, storage, DBT, GST, inflation targeting, each is a strand in a single web. Pull one thread, the rest responds. This is why the government, led by the Bharatiya Janata Party under Narendra Modi, has managed something rare in developing economies and democracies. Sustained growth without runaway inflation, repeated electoral victories without fiscal collapse. It is not magic, it is architecture. And yes, you see the architecture, you realize something unsettling and powerful. This is not short term governance, this is long horizon statecraft.